just started.
Thank you for reminding us.
We always forget that.
And I like the background you chose. It's my favorite.
Yeah, I also like tried all those things. It also like my favorite.
Isn't that beautiful though? I so want this painting. Can you imagine having this painting in your house?
How's the movie, by the way? I've not seen it.
It's awesome. It's really fun. It's a really good sci-fi.
I think it was on Amazon Prime. The movie Expanse.
I have to check because what Amazon does that it doesn't like show like provide all contents of Prime to all countries. So
Right.
that's the issue.
Well, you just have to pick a VPN in the States to get around it.
And
So
I also put the doc in the chat in case anybody's having trouble getting to it.
yeah. So the only thing looking through this is upcoming after the new year. We're going to have a meeting with Netflix and Armory. I believe that meeting invite's been sent out.
Yeah, it is.
If you didn't get it, go look at the shared calendar off of the Ortelius.io website. You'll be able to get to that meeting. And the goal is to talk about what they're calling application sets. I read through the documentation of what they have going on, and they're making life much more confusing.
So for anybody who wants to do that, I posted it on the Discord channel sometime back. Steve, is there a chance you can find that and post it, put it in the meeting notes?
I have it open. Let me share.
Yeah, if you could add that, those links, that was from the guys at Intuit, shared those notes with us.
The Argo CD Pro application set, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, that was one of them, and I think there was another one. I did most of my research off of the Argo CD website. So I went to their GitHub repo, try to figure out what they have going on around application sets. The confusing part for me, and I don't understand so where this all came about was it's very driven by releasing a single application, a monolith application, put it that way. So it's even though like Argo CDs focused around Kubernetes and Docker, the way it started, I think, coming out of Intuit was that they took an application, a monolith application, stuck it into a container, and then started running that in Kubernetes, probably with like a replica set of one to get some high availability. But so they call that an application. So they equate a container to an application. Now in the microservices world, that breaks down really quick. So they allowed for applications to contain applications in their model, and that got confusing as well. So what they did was they said, we need a new level, we'll call it application sets, which is supposed to replace applications of applications. Now, to throw the whole confusing thing, to confuse us even more, is you have the applications like in Argo CD belong to projects. So it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to, so the container for an application is really a project, not another application. So their whole world of how things are related, it gets very muddy very quickly. And I'm not sure if an application set's going to belong to a project or if it's going to be the reverse, a project belongs to an application set at that level.
Well, maybe we can persuade them that making that a static decision is a bad idea in the first place.
Yeah, so they've already written application sets. They've already got it basically done. It's going in beta, so they've
Argo
already
does, but not Spinnaker.
right. So, but Argo is created this whole control plane, and what it really is the application set. When I was looking at the code, really is focused around kind of templating and grouping. So you could basically like run a query. Um, uh, so let me back up a little bit. So what they're trying to do is you take your application. Let's say you have your deploy YAML file for your container. That gets in order for the whole CI/CD process to work, you have to take your deployment, all your deployment information out of your out of the Git repo for your code, put it into another repo that's shared across other applications. So you have this deployment repo that are going to contain all of what a cluster should look like. And in that, you can create directories in that Git repo for your different applications or containers that you want to deploy. And application sets is a way to go ahead and say, go find me all the deployment YAMLs that are in this namespace. And the idea is it's going to go through and recurse through the directory structure, finding all the deployment YAMLs that belong to a certain namespace. And then that's going to be your application set that you can then apply variables to do the deployment. It's very convoluted on how they're trying to do it. But basically, it looks like they are trying to get around the problem of not having a relational database and doing everything flat files, just files in directories in a single repo.
Yuck.
So that's the idea behind application sets. Not
Okay.
very pretty.
So I've got a question about this whole thing.
Yeah.
Let me start off with a statement. So I feel like we need a glossary, but more like a table of this is what your word means, and this is how we're mapping it into our vocabulary and idea space. And along those lines, does it make sense to you based on your current depth of all of these things that like their idea of projects would map into the Ortelius concept of domains, or is there a mismatch between those for you?
So domains in our in the Ortelius world have a hierarchy. So they're naturally um, gain inheritance from your parent. Um, so in the application set, the GitOps world, there is no hierarchy. It is, well, there is a hierarchy, but it's very, very shallow. You have your Git repo that you're going to have your deployment YAML, what you want the state of your cluster to look like. That is going to be in a Git repo, and then that Git repo is contained in the organization. That's the level deep that they can go, where we can go as deep as we want in Ortelius with organization. So that's one thing that's, and when you talk about a project, their project would be one subdomain in Ortelius, but it doesn't represent where it is in relationship to other projects. Does that help?
Yeah. I mean, I still feel like, even though the Ortelius domains is may have the hierarchical semantics, and then that's not really what makes sense in the GitOps world. But I've seen small organizations get eaten by bigger organizations, and so having that flexibility to be able to say, everybody in the acquisition is now a sub-organization in this larger thing, than the domain hierarchy, would be something that they can take advantage of, and I think larger organizations tend to build things that follow their organizational structure. And so being able to map that into projects may make sense even for GitOps people, but
Yeah, it really comes down to where the domain structure really comes into play is when you talk about the design patterns around microservices and how you want to group um, similar microservices that follow the same pattern together, even though that they may be coming from different parts of the organizational structure. So, for example, like a single sign-on microservice may be written by the infrastructure and the security team together. But then the developers extend that out and add on their, being able to expand upon that. And they have another, something that's similar or lives next to it that they would want to, from their side of the organization, group together as part of like a security domain or a single sign-on domain level. Most, like you said, most companies aren't there yet, especially smaller ones. But as things expand and people start creating larger numbers of microservices, they will need a decent cataloging methodology.
So on that note, I just want to point out what Netflix sees as an application. They also see an application as a container, but they have a situation where they have containers that are no longer loosely coupled, meaning that when they push one microservice out, it can impact another microservice, and they want to be able to roll out or deploy them all at the same time. So I think that on the 15th, we're going to get clarification on what both of these companies were trying, what Argo was trying to solve with their application sets, and what Netflix is asking us to solve with tightly coupled microservices.
Or tightly coupled versions of microservices.
Yes, tightly coupled versions of a microservice, right. So I think that Netflix, I think the Armory problem and the Argo CD problem may be different. They're calling them the same thing, which would be great to get everybody on the same call to get clarification.
And what I realize is this whole application set, terminology, like you're saying, Christopher, really came out of the world where monoliths were, a container was holding a whole monolithic application, and it wasn't thought out from a microservice perspective. It was literally, and that's the way Spinnaker came about. Spinnaker was initially created to, basically bootstrap VM images, EC2 instances, and bake them so they can then go ahead and lay down some application code and roll those out. Because initially Netflix, and I don't know if they still do or not, Netflix actually didn't adopt Kubernetes. They had a whole process of running all these VMs and coordinate all these. Their application basically is a Java application running in a VM. And it runs mainly under Eureka, is the API messaging platform that they use. And there's a couple others that are Java based that end up being baked into a VM. And then they just send these VMs out and they use all of AWS's auto scaling of VMs to be able to handle demand. So I don't know if they've, how far along they are in the Kubernetes world for Netflix, but that's where like Spinnaker came from, was actually building a VM, an EC2 instance with Java code placed into it.
I know what you're saying about this being a large organization sort of thing, but the idea of mono repos has leaked out of Google. And so I've seen smaller organizations feel like, oh, we need all of these disparate things in one big repo. And it's, going to have one big, QA release engineering sort of process. And so, I wonder how much of that is just like, oh, now everything has to be in sync because it's all part of the same version, even if it's not necessarily that tightly coupled.
Yeah, and talking to Dan Lorick, who's from Google, the idea behind the mono repo for Google is to provide basically a lockdown version of everything. And their repo, from my understanding, is a couple terabytes. It's not like a small little repo when we talk about, startup organizations, but it's into the terabytes, their mono repo. But what it allows them to do is basically to snapshot and tag and, and make it so you can, if you need to get back to something, you can. It may not be easy, but you can do it. And that's where the mono repo idea is coming about. Now, the hard part with mono repos, and this will probably change, I have a feeling with some of the CI/CD tools is, and this is where like the GitOps part is and the Argo CD is running into. If you change, let's say you have a mono repo and it's controlling 5 deployments at a GitOps level, and they're different projects. I'll use projects as a term, or products. We'll use products. So it's 5 different products that are totally independent, but there happens to be a GitOps repo for representing what production is of that. The problem with the mono repo is product A comes in and they check something in, it's going to trigger the whole process based on the GitHub or the Git triggers to go off and do something. Now you have to go in the mono repo, filter out what needs to be acted upon. What was that change actually for? Since we have five products in the same repo, are these 4 need to go off and do something, or at that level? And I think that's going to kind of get sorted out, but it's going to be kind of clunky, I think, for a while at that level.
Well, I think that if they're, from a Ortelius standpoint, we clarify some of that. So it wouldn't matter if they had one mono repo or not. We would be showing those relationships.
Yeah, for us, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yes, actually, we make a mono repo possible in a way.
And the reason why that's possible is because of the domain structure. Because of the domains are logical views of the organizational relationships that can be represented and point down into a mono repo for the specific product in the mono repo process. So it's going to be interesting to see, like you said, Christopher, how people are, going to many repositories and then coming back, and that's going to happen for a while. I think people are going to go both directions. And it'll be
absolutely. It's just, I think a lot of small organizations don't realize what some of the work and negative aspects of this are, but hopefully folks like us can make tools to make it suck less for whatever direction they want to go.
Yeah, and that's our goal with Ortelius, is to help make it suck less. and you get some crazy ideas out there and terminology. I remember working with Blue Cross Blue Shield, South Carolina, and they got into this whole concept of swim lanes and how a project moves down the swim lane, and then it never, that it can cross over into another swim lane at certain points, and how do you merge codes from one swim lane to the next swim lane. It was very, very bizarre.
Complicated.
overly engineered process. And the terminology just falls over really quick on some of the, when you get into some larger organizations. Hopefully the smaller ones are going to pick up what's more popular instead of inventing stuff on their own.
Okay, we're almost done here. There's 2 other items that I want to cover. I have added 2 or 3 categories. Let me look to see if I can see
Let me
it.
stop sharing.
2 are for blogs, and I'm going to put some blogs out there. So the website will have 3 categories of blogs, and I haven't, let me go look to see the categories I created. I created one called GitOps and Configuration Management, Ortelius Contributors, and Ortelius Tips and Tricks, just to get us started. So that will be, I'll have that out on the website hopefully by the end of today or tomorrow with some actual blogs in those categories, and it'll be displayed on the front page. Or actually, I think I'm going to put a menu item that just says blogs on the and then I'll go ahead and I'll create some initial issues asking for blogs for those 3 categories so that we can start getting blogs at least added to the website via a pull request through Git, so we can start tracking who's working on blogs a little better. And then we have a new person who's on. Sergio, you want to introduce yourself?
Looks like there's a couple new people.
Hey,
Oh, is there a couple new people? Okay, if you're new, please turn your camera on so you can introduce yourself.
well, my name is Sergio. I work as a consultant. I work a lot with Kubernetes. I know Argo CD, for example. I'm from Latam, from Chile. So if my English is not that well, sorry about that. I was curious about Ortelius, and I see, like, I don't know, there was issues open and maybe need help, and I'm here for that. Thank you.
Super, thank you. It's great to have somebody from Chile. It's on my bucket list to visit.
Cool. I will waiting for you.
Okay. You know, I was raised in California, and Chile's got to be a lot like California, except with not so many people, and still beautiful. The landscape still has to be pretty.
It is.
Anybody else out there want to introduce themselves to the team? Don't be shy.
Yes, go ahead.
All right. And we did, you see that Karam and I have our Ortelius Zoom backgrounds. I spent the day before Christmas making sure that we had Christmas presents for everybody. So I created 4 Zoom backgrounds, and you can get them from the bottom of the events page at the ortelius.io website.
So Tracy, like Suyash is here, so I am sure are you there? So like he's a colleague of mine. We work in the same project.
It's fun to make them.
Not so like this is online or right.
What show is that from that you guys have the same one?
It's from the TV show called The Expanse.
Okay.
It's a series. They're on their 3rd season, Steve, is that right?
I think so.
3rd or 4th?
And I believe it's an Amazon Prime one.
It's pretty fun.
Cool.
It's a
I
really,
love sci-fi.
yeah, it's good. It's you'll love it. It's a great premise, and it's got some really, they've just did a good job of incorporating, you know, what could be brought over or continued on in terms of like U.S. culture or just world culture into, we've colonized our solar system, basically. So that, you know, we have Mars fighting, you know, fights against Earth, and then we have somebody called the Belters. It's really cool. It's good.
Tracy, one little thing I see on here that we have a CDF podcast coming up January 7th.
Oh yeah, I forgot all about that.
Is the podcast on January 7th or the webinar?
That's when I get recorded.
Okay.
And I don't.
So if anybody's interested being on the podcast, we could do a panel discussion or
Yeah.
something like that. The panels work out really well. if you're interested in talking about Ortelius or just microservices or whatever in general, we can fit that into the podcast.
Yeah, we should do a podcast, and then we do a webinar, and we should do the webinar as a panel too. So please send me an email, Tracy at Deploy Hub, if you want to be part of the podcast and the webinar, and I'll make sure and send you the info. For the podcast, I think we can be pretty relaxed about it. I'll put together a list of questions that Jackie can ask us, and then on the then we can do an expanded version of that for the webinar.
Yeah, so you won't be going in blind. You'll know what the questions are up front and things like that. So it's a good way to get out there and get some exposure. And also the podcasts, they're recorded ahead of time, and then Jackie will go through and edit them, clean them up. So it's, if you stumble or something like that, not a big deal. That will get sorted out in the editing process.
And
Same
I'll
with
send an
webinar.
email out to everybody today about both of those items. Thanks for reminding me, Steve.
Yeah, I just saw that on the outreach stuff.
Yeah, so the more the merrier, it'd be fun. So don't hesitate if you want to show up for that.
Tracy, on the blog entries, how are we doing those through a GitHub issue or just email?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to go ahead and create a couple of, just to get it started, to make it obvious that we need them. I'm going to create a couple of issues for each, like 2 for each of the categories. And then in the future, we can just create an issue and then a pull request if you want to submit a blog. I would like to be able to start tracking the blogs via GitHub.
Okay.
Or Git, so we can track who's doing the work easier.
Right.
And then I'll take it from there and do the editing and get it posted. Or I'll eventually find someone to help with doing that.
Yep.
Because I'm a really bad editor. I'm so bad. I need a compiler.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Which there should be by now, right? For every language, a document compiler that basically goes and edits your entire document for you automatically. Why does a human still have to do that? I don't understand.
I think we have too many sub languages
Maybe
version
so.
of the same.
All right, so I'll get that done by the end of day tomorrow, or is my goal.
Perfect. All right. I think that.
I have one question.
Sure.
I was looking at the issues. I don't know if I'm missing something, but I would like to have maybe like a prioritization about the issues, because I don't know, it's like I'm just looking randomly about the issues. Maybe if there is a way like, hey, these are the top 10, some top 20, I don't know, something like that. Just don't, I don't know, working on things that are not so important at this moment.
Yeah, we're working with who is it? Siddharth, who's not on the call today, is pulling together a Kanban Trello board to start organizing that stuff.
Cool. That makes sense.
So that's going to be, that just got started before the holidays, and we'll start, getting that rolled out and getting everybody on the Trello board and stuff after the new year.
And Sergio, we do have a fairly big project we're going to kick the year off with. So, and that has to do with these component sets. So it'll be easier to see some of the tasks assigned to that particular level of work. More than likely, we're going to do what we need to do to solve the Netflix problem initially, where you want to be able to create almost like a release train for microservices themselves even though it might not be an application, but there may be, you know, a set of security microservices, and 4 of them always have to be released at the same time. We have to somehow tie those together, and that's will be the first big project for this team.
Okay, I will read about that.
Yep, and
And
we're
try
going to
to
start
help.
learning about that. I posted that what the, you know, what you may know more about it if you know Argo, but how we're going to work on solving that problem. So I'm glad that you know Argo.
Well,
Helpful.
yes, you say a few. Yeah. Well, we can, if you need maybe an opinion, I can help with that.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll be sure that the 3 co-community managers get that stuff up on a Trello Kanban board, so it's clear what we're all needing to work on.
Anything else? All right, so the next meeting, I believe, is going to be in January, right? January. And we have the date.
4th of Jan.
4th.
Outreach meeting.
Yeah. So it looks like we'll touch base one more time before the podcast. And also in January, the working groups be started back up on their regular schedule. So those just got canceled for these couple weeks here in between the holidays in the States.
Steve, we also had discussed that we are going to have a session regarding the integration with the CI/CD of Ortelius.
Yes, I will get that scheduled. Integration part of Ortelius. I'll look at the calendar and get that scheduled at the beginning of January there, because that will kind of come into play with when we're talking about application sets and all that stuff. What we may do is I'll look at the timing to see if we can get it. I'll talk to Tracy to see if we want to make that meeting before or after the Netflix Armory Intuit meeting or not. Because sometimes I'll figure that out. And then Karam, I just need to talk to you offline real quick after this. I'll just talk to you on Discord.
Sure.
All right. Cool. All right. Anybody else? All right.
Have a good holiday.
Yes.
Everybody have a
good
safe holiday, New Year.
Stay safe.
I'm going to stay home and play Animal Crossing. Woohoo! Big New Year.
You'll win.
Bye.
Last meeting.
Have fun.
Bye.